Hello and welcome back to the Second and Two podcast. I'm your host, TB, with my co-host, producer extraordinaire, Riz God, Jody.
I've heard a lot of things in my day, but that ain't one I've ever heard. That's
Let's
crazy.
go. Got him. I knew I would get you on that one. I needed you. I don't know. I need to get you laughing to start the pod today.
You needed some flavor out of me. See what I would say?
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So we got the corners today. We're still looking ahead to the NFL draft. Combine just finished up. So we have more information on these guys, whether that ultimately helps or not, you be the judge. But we got more stuff. Pro days are still coming. Still crunching tape.
Sure.
And we're gonna crunch some tape today. We're gonna talk some guys. We're gonna talk our favorite corners, Joe. Anything in general that you saw kind of looking at this class or how you felt?
I would say that a lot of these dudes are pretty tall for corners. At least I think typically they're normally like 5'10" to like 6 foot area.
Mm-hmm.
Not tall, not like super tall, but like decent. But all these dudes are over that 6 foot threshold, so that was interesting to me.
Yeah, there's a few taller guys. There's some shorter guys in this class that I'll probably mention. But the guys that we're gonna do an in-depth look at today, yeah, they're all kind of that taller, longer corner, which I think fits the mold of what NFL teams are trying to do this day and age anyway. So it kind of makes sense that a lot of the better guys are going to be that, look like that. So I think it's a good observation, and you're right. I mean, it's where the modern NFL is going, realistically.
True.
So let's get into it, bro. Let's dive in.
All right, so the first guy we're taking a look at is going to be Cam Smith out of South Carolina. Let's see, he's 6 foot. As I mentioned, everyone is above that threshold. He's 188 pounds, played for 4 years. He's got 32 games over that span, 91 tackles. What's 26 PBUs? What does that mean?
Pass breakups, Joe.
There
Come
you go.
on. My stat guy. PBUs.
Let's see. We got 6 picks. Let's see. I guess people completed on him 48% of the time, and then allowed 6 touchdowns. That's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Those are some stats I didn't write down, but it's good to see.
Yeah. I think Cam Smith, the first guy to evaluate, is the first guy whose tape I watched. I think there's the first thing that stood out when I was watching him is that he's truly like a playmaker. I mean, he has 6 INTs, right? I think that was the most of the guys that we evaluated. There may be some players kind of lower on the draft board that have more picks than him in this class, but in terms of the top of this class, he had the most picks that I looked at. And that's kind of what stands out on film is he's a playmaker. And so one of the reasons why that is his first strength I've got listed here is his versatility. South Carolina did a lot of different stuff with him. They lined him up all over the place. He lined up as a traditional corner. He lined up as the nickel, or what some people now are calling the slot corner. Other defenses may call it the star, but he lined up basically in that slot role, and even as a safety, where he's standing over number 2, from 10 yards of depth.
Yeah,
so he's even playing a little safety.
That too. I was confused when I seen that. I was like, is he playing like cover 2 deep right now, or?
Yeah. I mean, that's the cool thing is he did do a lot at South Carolina. He showcased a lot of his talent and his ability to fill different roles, and his length and then the burst that he has in and out of breaks is really what allows him to fill those different roles. You mentioned, his size. I mean, being a 6 foot, 190 pound corner does give you some versatility to go play inside, play in the safety. I mean, that's what, your prototypical safeties are sitting, just over 6 foot and between 190 and 200 pounds. So like that's, an ideal looking safety in the modern NFL. And so he's playing corner, but he can do some of those other things. And so his versatility was something that really jumped off the page to me. And we can watch a clip of that right here. Joe, don't be afraid to butt in if we're having technical difficulties like we have with the receivers. But so this is a clip of him against Clemson this year, and so he's sitting in the slot, right, playing at about 10 yards of depth, or 9 yards of depth over number 2, and this is really like a safety look, right? He's playing like, he looks like he's playing safety right now. Depending on coverage wise, if it's man coverage, he may just be the nickel corner, but they're having him play off. But this is a big time down, right? It's third and 2.
Short.
And you've got Clemson lined up in triples with a lone tight end to the one side and then 3 receivers to this side. And so they're going to play press man outside and press man on the inside slot. And then Cam Smith is playing off. So he's, playing 9 yards of depth over the slot. That's pretty rare for a true corner to be able to kind of feel comfortable there. So you kind of let the clip play here. You'll see he plays really patient. Like, one thing I want to look at, and he makes the play at the end here and gets the interception, but just we'll watch it one more time from the back end, kind of how he's able to break through the top of the route, beat the receiver. He kind of, that's what we call running the route for him, right? He basically, it's as if the quarterback was throwing at him, but you could kind of see his patience here. See how he weaves with the stem. He's not like in a hurry to get out of here because he's really trying to sit on this route. He's thinking 3rd and 2, I'm going to get something short. I'm playing at 9 yards. I have plenty of room. You see the mistake guys will make at that is like they're so worried about getting beat vertical that they're getting out of their pedal. And that's when the guy sits down and runs the hitch right now. And now it's an easy completion, right? Coaching my high school kids all the time. They're so worried about getting beat vertical, which, yes, we don't want to get beat vertical. But sometimes we give up, the fight, and it's just stealing. Like, we're just giving it to him. And he does such a good job of playing almost like he's playing catch technique. And then just his burst out of that, the length and the burst that he has allows him to play that way. And so you can play so many different kinds of coverages and positions with him. I think that makes him really valuable to a defense because he can do all those different things. So that was one thing that really jumped off the page to me. The next thing that I saw when I was looking at him was his really fluid hips. That's one thing I would say when you're evaluating corners, and I coach secondary players, right? That's what I've coached my whole career. When you're evaluating those kinds of guys, the number one thing that you're looking for in a corner is, can he flip his hips and run? Like, is he smooth? Does he understand the timing of when to do that, when his cushion has been eaten up enough that he can flip his hips and go, and that he's going to try really hard not to do that? Basically, you want to stay square for as long as possible, because then anything that breaks in front of you, all it is breaking downhill. Once you flip those hips, you've committed, and you can't get back downhill once you flip those hips. So you want to stay square as long as possible and in your pedal as long as possible until okay, it's a vertical route. I have to flip my hips. And then at that point, when you flip your hips, can you do that without losing ground? That's a really, really hard skill. It's something that's hard to teach. It's something that's hard to develop. And some guys, like, they just have that hip flexibility and they have that smoothness that you're looking for. And Cam Smith is one of those guys. Like, when he sees a vertical route, he does a really good job of staying square until he has to flip those hips. And then when he does, he doesn't lose a step because he gets that front hip around really quick. And so here's a really good look at it right here of him playing press technique. I believe this is against Missouri this year. And so this is a high red zone, 25-yard line. They're just going to throw the fade ball out here. They know they've got one. Missouri knows they've got one-on-one. Their trips open in the boundary. So they got 3 receivers bunched to the boundary, but 1 receiver by himself to the field. And they know they've created the one-on-one matchup with the press corner. So that's, as a quarterback, you're thinking, okay, I like my guy versus their guy. Check fade and let's throw that thing up, right? I know I've got one-on-one. Exactly, Joe. Exactly. That's all what all the OCs think, right? They're all, oh, that's the 50-50 ball. And you're like, as a defensive coordinator, I'm like, is it 50-50? Because here's the thing. 2 good things can happen for me, and 1 good thing can happen for you. The 1 good thing for you as an offense is you catch it. For me, if it's an incompletion or an interception, that's a good thing for me.
You still hit him with one of these.
Yeah.
Either way.
So either way, that's a good thing for me. So Is it really 50-50? As long as the matchup isn't an absolute dominating favor for them, like they have to make the right throw and they have to go catch it, right? So you'll see Cam Smith and he's in one of those what they call 50-50 balls. Obviously, I'm questioning the validity of that percentage, but you'll see him here playing press. Boom. He doesn't really get a good jam, but like his pedal to flipping those hips, and here's an example of like, this is a poor throw, just keeping it real, right? But you can see the hip flip. You can see the hip flip from this angle. Really, really, I mean, he gets his hips around, his eyes around, and then he's able to just go find the football and make a play, which is for him a relatively easy play. But in my focus on this is not necessarily on the end of the play, but just in his ability to flip those hips and stay on top of the shoulder. From this behind angle, it's really good, right? You can see it. He feels, right, this guy's eating his cushion. So he stayed square for about 5 yards, which is pretty impressive to be square for 5 yards and press, and then feel that, and he's going to just rip that front hip open and flip. And you see how he doesn't lose any ground.
Yeah.
This receiver is running. Yeah, he's on that top shoulder. Like this receiver is running full speed at him. He has to flip his hip and turn and run and loses almost no ground. And that's why he's in a great position to go make this play. That's just like a unique trait that some guys, like I said, some guys naturally have. That is just like hey, God-given, you really have that. Some guys can develop it over time. It's certainly a skill you can work on. But if you already have it, my job as a coach, when I'm coaching a player like that, is 10 times easier, right?
Yeah.
So definitely something as a coach, if I'm looking to draft a corner, if that guy already has that, man, I can really work with that.
Yeah, one of my notes I had, I said he was good at change of direction. I'm sure there's something similar with the fluid hips. It's the same thing in a way.
Yeah.
Just like what I was seeing was he was able to break on balls pretty quickly, not like you said, lose ground on anything. So I think that was like those tie in together.
And Joe, it's like you read my mind, or you wrote some kind of script for this, because my next thing was his quick feet. His quickness out of breaks, whether it was downhill, flipping and running, those things help him make a lot of plays on the ball. He has really, really quick feet, or what you said, even change of direction, right? I wouldn't say he's quite Zay Flowers, our guy who we evaluated last week, his COD in and out of breaks, right? But that would be a fun matchup if we got to see Cam Smith versus Zay Flowers. But his COD for a corner is really good. He's got really quick feet. So here's a good example of it against Vanderbilt this last year. You're going to see Vanderbilt's an empty. And so they're playing some version over here to the boundary of like 3/2, right? So they're going to have a corner safety and a backer. So it's some variation of, 3/2. So whether that's cover 4, cover 2, match quarters, whatever it is, we'll look at, basically you're going to see a hitch right in front of Cam Smith, and then you'll see his quick feet on the down break. It's pretty impressive here. So he kind of opens his hips, he sees the bro, and he just breaks, and then he's able to rip at the ball and create a fumble. Vanderbilt ultimately recovers it, but that's just another example of, like, I talked about him being a playmaker. He has the 6 picks. He forces a fumble here, right? We'll watch it one more time. Just opens those hips. Oh, I see it. Get downhill now and rip at that ball, and I'm a playmaker. His hands are always on the ball. He's got quick feet. He's got fluid hips. And he's really versatile. So for me, when I'm looking at comps, right, and I was thinking of, like, who does this guy remind me of? He's really he's given up some more touchdowns than some of the other guys in this class, but he's made a lot more plays. So he kind of fits in that, like, boom or bust or feast or famine kind of category. I do think ultimately, though, like, when a guy's a real playmaker, as long as the plays he's making are outweighing some of the stuff he gives up, if you have those kind of corners that they see things and they cheat, and you have to live with a little bit. If you're going to let them be them, sometimes you have to live with, like, they get beat here and there because they thought they saw something where they could go make a play.
Yeah, no doubt.
There's a fine line between like overcoaching a guy out of what he does really well and also not allowing him to hurt you by being too rogue, by being too much of
Yeah.
a wildcat. So you kind of have to harness it and hone it in. But a guy who I think has done a pretty good job of that the last couple of years that Cam Smith reminds me a little bit of is Trayvon Diggs. A guy who got his hands on the ball a lot the last couple of years. This is actually a clip
Yeah.
from 2 years ago. Obviously, like I said, yeah, he's got his hand on the ball a lot.
He went nuclear with those picks like 2 years ago. It was hilarious.
Yeah, the year he had like 11 picks, or whatever it was. Yeah. So, and also at the same time, a little bit of a feast or famine guy. Like, is going to definitely jump some routes, take some chances, but he's got that same like super fluid hips, quick feet, versatile kind of deal, right? So here's an example of, we can see kind of the quick feet. Looks very similar to the play we just watched with Cam Smith, right? So he's going to get the hitch in front of him. You'll be kind of able to see it better from the next angle. And he actually ends up turning this into an interception. This was a pretty big play against the Panthers a couple years ago. I might even remember it when it happened, but does the same kind of thing, flips those hips, sees it, breaks, gets his eyes back to the ball, right? Those fluid hips, quick feet, versatile playmaking, get his hands on the ball. Very reminds me a lot of what some of the things Cam Smith can do. Where I think maybe Diggs is a little bit better right now than Cam is in his press. Cam's got some work to go there to be like a true, press
like
corner.
One-on-one. Yeah.
And you see him, he does it, in some of these clips here, but I think there's some things he can do better in terms of being that kind of guy. I think where, if you look at what he can do for a defense right away, he's probably best suited to be a corner in a scheme that plays more cover 3. Just because his strengths allow him to excel in that role, cover 3, or maybe even a little quarters, like being able to play kind of an off-zone corner where he gets to see the ball, right? He gets to use his quick feet. He gets to use his fluid hips. He can break on things. He sees everything in front of him. I think that's where he excels right now, as opposed to saying, hey, go, press that guy right now and just take him away. I don't think he's quite that guy, at least not yet. That doesn't mean he can't become that, but I just don't know that right away that's what you would ask him to do. I think if you want him to be good right away, it's a scheme that allows him to play more cover 3, right? More quarters off man where he can see the ball. So right now, if you look at his projections, he's kind of a, mid first to early second round pick, somewhere between pick 16 and 33. And you've got the Commanders, the Buccaneers, the Cowboys, and the Ravens are all guys who are interested in him. But I know, Joe, did you have some more stuff statistically from him, or some games that you thought he really balled out in?
Oh, I did not check out games for any of these dudes actually, but I wrote down their stats and over his 4 years, his total tackles was 7 for 2019, 16, 41, and then 27. Let's see, solo on all those, he had 5 out of 7 that first year, 10 out of 16, 31 out of 41, then 23 out of 27. And the assists are the rest of those, right? So 2 assists in the first year, 6 assists, 10 assists, 4 assists. And then he had that forced fumble that we seen.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's see, no picks that first year. The second year he had 2, 3 in his third year, and then 1 his last year.
Yeah.
And then with the combine just happening, his broad jump was 11 feet 2 inches. His 40 was 4.43, and then he had a 38-inch vert.
Poof. Poof. Yeah, he's athletically, he's certainly gifted. You can see a lot of that on film. I think of all the teams here that we're talking about being interested, the Commanders, the Buccaneers, the Cowboys, and the Ravens, anybody that you feel like you'd be interested to see him on there?
Probably the Commanders, just because I normally think they have at least one really good corner / safety. You know what I mean? Defensive back, and so that would be interesting to see. And then the Cowboys, just because you compared him to the guy, that'd be cool seeing him on the opposite side. And then
Well, what's interesting? No, go ahead.
I was gonna say that when I seen your comp for him, it kind of made sense to me because one of my notes I wrote was he has bad/good eyes, like the whichever way you want to spin it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
like they're bad because he's looking at the QB, but then they're good because he went and made the play. So when I seen that, it's like that actually makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah. It's interesting. The Commanders are going to be a common theme here. It seems from everything you read and look at, they're like a guarantee to pick a corner at 16.
Okay.
Like they really want a corner there is what at least what they're putting out. Who knows
Yeah.
what's real, right? We'll see what happens with the draft. But so Commanders may come up a few more times here. But the Cowboys Dan Quinn does like to play cover 3. And so that, might be interesting if you had Diggs and Cam Smith both on the field. You would have a couple of ball hawks on each side that might be kind
Yeah.
of fun, who are similar kind of players. And now you're talking about you can do a lot of different things because they're both kind of multiple in what they can do. You can play either one of them in the slot if you wanted to. You can do some different stuff. I think that would be fun. And then the Ravens were another team that I thought would be interesting. Just because they're known for like their versatility in the secondary. It seems like they always kind of have guys in the secondary that are versatile, can do different things. Like I think of Marlon Humphrey, and I think of for a long time they had Jimmy Smith there, guys like that can do a lot of different stuff. And Cam might fit really well into that scheme. I would think they would be a team that would know how to use him in different ways. So a couple of interesting teams there that he could go to. But anything on Cam before we move on, Joe?
No, you pretty much covered it. It was the same similar concepts. I just worded them different. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so the next guy we're looking at is going to be Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. He's 6'2", 201. He played 3 years. Two of them were with Colorado, so another Pac-12 school still. He has 30 games, 128 tackles, 28 pass breakups. Got that one locked in now. 4 picks. Same completion percentage on him. He has 48, and then 4 touchdowns allowed on him.
So I don't want to give anything away here, but like Christian Gonzalez is probably my favorite guy in this draft in terms of the corners. Like Christian Gonzalez is a dog, bro. Like what he put on film this year at Oregon, he is a good football player. Can do a little bit of everything. The frame that he's working with, 6'2", 201 pounds for a
Big
corner.
Boy.
Bro, that's what you want. And he's not big and stiff like most of the time, and why you struggled to see these bigger corners have success in the league for so long, and why a lot of those guys end up playing safety is because when you're 6'2", 200 pounds, like it's hard for you to be fluid in the hips and explosive and move the way that like the 5'10" corner can move.
Yeah. It's a lot harder to be shifty and like quick motions and
that twitch, it's not quite as there. And even if it is, it's straight line. It's not side to side. Your lateral movement, your back pedal, your fluidity of opening up your hips and driving and all that generally isn't as good. And the crazy thing with Christian Gonzalez is all that stuff is there.
And then some. I saw a lot more too.
And then some. You're right. So my first thing that I want to look at with him is his ability to play press man. Like his combination of size, elite speed, length in his arms, ball skills, like all of that gives him the potential to be just a dominant press corner. And Oregon had him do more than that, but they did let him go press. And so the first thing we'll look at is actually him at Colorado. This was last year, 2021 at Colorado against Cal. Great rep of him in press man. And you can just see how big he is because he looks like, when you look at him right here, he almost looks like you put a linebacker out there and let him go line up at corner. He's huge. Like look at him compared to the corner over on the other side. Or even the safety behind him, both safeties. Like he is massive. He's a freak to be playing corner. So watch the clip here. Like he's just patient. He gets his hands on people and then he plays through the football. Plays through the man to get to the football. He's got like a little bit of an attitude to him. Here's another clip. He's actually in the slot here, right? Playing point man on the slot. Same thing. He's physical with his hands, and then he's able to just make plays because of his length. He's freaky, man. This is at Colorado. He wasn't even as good at Colorado. He's at the bottom of the screen here. He gets a little double move. Tough to see it, but he makes a play in the end zone. That one was freaky. I mean, just run it back one more time. Just the different levels that he can play, press man at. And all of this was his Colorado tape, which isn't nearly as good as his Oregon tape. And there he is in the slot. I'm gonna shuffle, boom, come back inside, big paw over the slant, knock it down. Same thing here coming on against Oregon State. Motions down with the guy. Guy's gonna run the out route and then run it vertical, and he's able to flip and run, find the football. Right? I mean, just the ability to play press man. Everyone loves a corner who can say, hey, I can just go take out the other team's best guy and play press man on him, right? Yeah. So that ability that he shows on film, both at Colorado and at Oregon, was pretty consistent and something that, I think he has the potential to be a guy who's good enough to, you could just say, hey, go take out the best team, the other player's best player or the other team's best player right now.
Throw him on an island out there.
Yeah, hey, we might see a little Gonzalez Island in the league. The next thing that just jumps out is his explosiveness. I mean, whether it's bursting out of a break, jumping to the high point of the catch, running with the ball after an interception. This guy's like oozing is the word that came to mind, like oozing with athleticism and explosiveness. Like he's a freak. He ran 4.38 and he jumped 41.5 inches at the combine. Then Joe, if you had any other numbers, I know you guys were looking at a lot of
11.1 on the broad jump.
Yeah, dude. Like that's freaky stuff for a 6'2", 200-pound guy. Like they don't make him like that. You know what I'm saying? This is a rare athlete, and he's just gifted. So I saw this, right?
Yeah.
I'm watching all of his film. I'm like, man, this guy lines up and blocks a kick. Right? Look at him. He's sitting here off the edge. He's gonna go block a kick, and like his length, explosion, all of it is on display. Yeah. His length, his explosion, his athleticism, his jumping, all of it on display here with this block kick. Something that like he's going to bring to a team that some of these other guys just can't. Like, it's like a rocket launcher shot off the line. And then just like running down the sideline like, yep, that's what I do.
That was me, yep.
Yep, like, I'm going to watch it one more time. It's like a track star shot out of the blocks. And then, boom, gets his hands up, jumps to the block point, the length, like, man, that is some explosive stuff that you don't get from a lot of these guys. And that's part of why I couldn't justify making him any lower than the best guy.
Yeah. Especially on special teams, though. Like, you're like one of the dudes on the defense, and you're like, you could take it off. They're just kicking it, but nah, not him.
No,
Monster,
no.
man.
Yeah, he's making all the plays, every play he can. I love that about him. And like even some of the stuff that you see from a like attitude perspective, like this guy, you can just tell he plays the game with zero fear. He walks on the field like I'm the best player. Like that part of him, that confidence, that I don't know that I saw it as much at Colorado as I did at Oregon on the film. And that's probably a byproduct of just making more plays at Oregon. But he's super confident. So this last thing that, I saw that showed up was his ball skills. Like he won a lot of one-on-ones at the catch point this year. He had 12 pass breakups and 4 picks in one season, which is really, really impressive. All of his interceptions are all at Oregon, and almost half his pass breakups are at Oregon, all in this 1 year. So you watch it here. This is just a cut up of like consistent plays of him just making plays on the ball. So here he is against BYU this year. And this was when BYU came to Oregon, both teams ranked in the top 15. Big game. He's like, all right, I got this guy down here by myself, one-on-one up at the top. Press man, find the football, play the catch point. Nah, never had a chance. And just looks at him like, nah, bro. Doesn't even like celebrate. There's no like celebration. It was like, yeah, that was supposed to happen. Like no
The
problem.
celebration came from his teammates, bro. They're like, hey, that's
Yeah.
all you.
Here's another one where he just at the top of the route just runs through like a rocket through the slant, and boom, you didn't have a chance.
Yeah.
Just like unreal ball skills. And there's more that, I mean, there were all kinds of clips on tape where he makes some incredible plays. He has one against Oregon State where he's running like with his back to the quarterback and the ball gets thrown and he like just reaches up and like jumps up and finds it. And again, that's all of it. The athleticism, the explosion, the ball skills, like all of these things are why he's got to be my favorite guy in the draft in terms of corners. I just think, you know, he's so explosive in his ability to play press and find the football that to me, he reminded me of a guy who came out just a couple years ago, plays in Atlanta right now, AJ Terrell. Now, AJ Terrell kind of had like a rougher first year, rookie year with the Falcons. And then the last 2 years has been really, really good. And AJ Terrell is only like 5'11". So this is the crazy thing is like the comp athletically for Christian Gonzalez as a 6'2" guy was like, to me, it was the same explosion as a 5'11" guy. Now to give him the 3 extra inches and the extra wingspan. So that's why it was like so impressive. Like they're not quite the same. They can't play the same way because of the difference in their size. But in terms of like the explosion and athleticism, they look very similar to me on film. So like here's a clip of AJ Terrell against the Dolphins this last year. Kind of similar to that play that Gonzalez just made against BYU, right? Where he can just break through the guy on the slant and makes the play on the ball. Very similar. And it was even easier for Christian Gonzalez because of that length. So I think very similar kind of player where with AJ Terrell, they do a lot with him. He can play some zone. He can play some press man. They do all kinds of different stuff because he's really good with his vision and seeing the football, right? So that makes him a really good zone corner. His instincts are good. But then also like he's good enough in press man that I can say, go take that guy out and go play man. And so for that reason, if you look at Christian Gonzalez and his potential for the next level for any defense, like he should slide into any defense and fit well right away. I don't think there's a team that could say we don't need Christian Gonzalez. Like that guy could fit anywhere right now and be a press man corner that mixes in some off man, some zone coverages, like that utilize all of his athleticism and his instincts. I think basically any team in the league could use that. But right now, he's projected as a first-round pick, somewhere between picks 6 and 18. You know, people have liked him to the Lions, the Eagles, shocker, the Commanders, and then the Cardinals were another team that came up. Joe, what do you think?
The man's a monster. I'll give you some of the notes I took for him. I said he was physical. I seen him break on a lot of balls and lay high on whoever either caught a screen or whatever the case may be. He was flying around for sure. He's really quick. We showed the block field goal. That's only like a couple strides and you're there, you know? So that was another thing I wrote down. And then just a simple one. This is more like a question for you, I guess. I was going to say if he was more like a guy who always played zone. I usually talked about him playing man, but I wasn't sure. I can't tell half the time for like corners when I'm reading the defense if it's like cover 2, which is like man, or if they're always just playing zone. It all looks the same to me. That's why I'm not good at Madden. But
wouldn't be a very good quarterback either.
No, not at all. I could make the throw. I couldn't tell you if the guy's going to be sitting there or not, though.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he was more of a zone player or not. And then I had comps for him. It was more just based like off his attitude, probably. I had like Richard Sherman or like Jalen Ramsey. I don't know if those sit well with you at all, but just like the way he plays defense with that chip on his shoulder to me.
The Ramsey comp is not a bad one just because of the athletic makeup and with the size is similar. I hesitated to say Ramsey only because the thing that I think separates Jalen Ramsey from almost any other corner playing right now is his physicality and his tackling. There's no other corner that tackles like he does. And Christian Gonzalez, I didn't see quite that on film. Though I do agree with you that there are moments at the point of attack where he was physical, especially at the catch point.
Oh, could I sell you on some numbers then about tackling?
Oh yeah, go ahead. I love it. I love it.
So his freshman year, he had 25 tackles. 23 of those were solo. Sophomore year, 53 with 42 being solo. Then last year, 51 with 35 being solo. And then, like you said, those 4 picks.
He certainly had more tackles than like Cam Smith. Yeah, I think it's not a bad comp to talk about him in the Jalen Ramsey sphere. I think there's similar athletic makeup where we'll see. And Ramsey's another guy who can play zone or man. It just depends on what you're trying to do. Ramsey can play in the slot. He can play outside, right? Ramsey could even play safety if you wanted him to. And Christian Gonzalez can kind of do some of that stuff too. So I don't think it's a bad comp. It's lofty.
Yeah,
lofty. but I do really like this guy. So I'm not gonna shy away from that one. I do think it would be interesting. Of the teams I have up there, I think if he went to the Eagles,
that's what I was thinking.
That would be a real interesting deal there, because with big play Slay on one side and Christian Gonzalez on the other, and then depending on what they do with Bradbury, whether they bring him back or I think he's under contract for one more year, if I remember.
I think they lost a dude though. I couldn't tell you who, but I think they lost one.
Maybe Avonte Maddox, who was their slot guy. So yeah, it just, no matter what, he slides in and you just instantly are more dynamic in the secondary with him. So yeah, I really like Christian Gonzalez. But Joe, who are we talking next?
We're looking ahead to Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois. Let's see. Our guy sits at 6'1", 180. Oh, man. That's 4 years, yeah? Before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. 4 years.
Quick math.
Yeah. Well, it's tough when you do those because it's like, it looks like 3, but you got to count that first one. So
I know. I do the same thing every time.
So yeah, 41 games in those 4 years. He's got 157 tackles, 25 pass breakups, 5 picks, completion percentage of 45% on him, and then 4 touchdowns allowed.
All right. I just sold you. As much as I love Christian Gonzalez, right? Devin Witherspoon, I almost put him in front of Christian Gonzalez. That's how much I like Devin Witherspoon. He is the biggest 6'1", 180 guy you'll ever watch on film, if that makes sense. The guy plays bigger than he is. He's extremely tough. He's efficient in what he does. You can tell he's got great football instincts. He was a guy I would describe as a great football player. Not like, oh, he's a great corner or he's a great this or that. Like, he's a great football player. Like, that's what you're getting with him, is the definition of what you want in a football player. If anyone fits Dan Campbell and the Lions, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, but like, it's this guy. It would not shock me if the Lions love him.
They need defensive dudes, that's for sure.
And one of the reasons why they might love him, first thing I saw on film that just showed up and showed out to me consistently, his attitude. This guy plays the game with like a chip, like a boulder on his shoulder, and it's like an intensity that is infectious among his teammates. And he makes a bunch of big plays. It's like he makes big plays happen because he just has such a huge chip. I got to see this guy in person twice this year. First, I was at that Michigan-Illinois game, and I remember telling my dad, I went to that game with my dad. We're watching that game from basically the 50-yard line right behind Michigan's sideline. And this dude was making so many plays for a corner. And I wasn't really plugged into who were going to be draft prospects at that time or anything like that. I was really plugged into college football, but I didn't really know who Devin Witherspoon was at that time. And I looked at my dad and I was like, who the heck is 31? Like, who is this guy? Where is he coming from? Like, who's supposed to be blocking him? Like, how is he making all these plays? And it was just so, and like, you could see Illinois sideline every time this dude made a play. It was like, man, they are in the game right now. They are in it, and it felt like Michigan was a much more talented team. It ended up being a really close game that Michigan had to kick a game-winning field goal for. But like, there were a few guys for Illinois that day that stood out, and I'm sure we'll talk about a couple others. The Brown brothers, the Brown brothers, one plays safety, one plays running back. I'm sure we'll mention both of them when we get there. And then Devin Witherspoon. Those three guys like showed out. But Devin Witherspoon was by far the best, like in terms of, whoa, who is that guy? He's just showing up consistently. And then got to see him a little bit at the Senior Bowl too, in person.
Okay.
And he had a good showing at the Senior Bowl from what I saw. Looks the part for sure. Like looks all of 6'1", 180. Looks like, what you want. His numbers were good at the combine from what I could tell. Joe, I'm sure you're gonna get us caught up on that in a little bit here, but just I want to get to the clip here.
I don't think he was there.
At the combine?
Yeah, I couldn't find numbers on him. Either that
Okay.
or somehow they weren't as impressive as everyone else. I don't know.
Okay. So here he is at the top of the screen playing corner, right? And this is, Michigan tries to run counter. And he gets off the block and pile drives the Michigan back into the sideline. And this was a huge play because at the time, Michigan's top two backs were out. Coming into the game, we didn't have our backup. Michigan didn't have their backup running back, who ends up going off, without Blake Corum. And then Blake Corum got hurt in this game. Yeah. And so they didn't have either one of their top two backs. And so this is CJ Stokes, who was a freshman, their third back. And it almost looked like he got hurt on this play because Devin Witherspoon just pile drives him into the ground. Boom. Like, that's how you want your corner to come up and run support.
Tackle, too.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I let in this run because this is back-to-back plays, if you didn't know. And I wanted everyone watching this to know that this is back-to-back plays he makes. So he makes that play on second down or whatever it is, and then he comes back and boom.
In the backfield.
In the backfield. And so I think what happens is on this play, he feels his receiver go in orbit motion, right? This is him here. He feels Ronnie Bell going in orbit motion. And there was either one of two things happen. Either Ryan Walters, his defensive coordinator, who's now the head coach at Purdue, said, hey, when we get this motion, I want you to blitz off the edge because this is the play we're going to get coming back. Or he just had such great football instincts that he had watched the film and he kind of felt what was coming. And he just said, I'm going to wildcat and go make this football play because I know what's coming and I know I can just go make it. And, man, when that happens and it works,
thing of beauty.
Thing of beauty is correct, Joe. Man, like, and that's like, okay, if a corner's highlight tape starts off and the first three clips are just him hitting dudes big time, that means he's either a really good football player who's super physical or he's just not that great in coverage and he's probably meant to be a safety. But Devin Witherspoon's tape, it starts off like that. Like his first three clips, if you look up his highlights, his first three clips are going to be him just smoking cats, hitting dudes in the backfield. I love it. I just love that's the kind of intensity and attitude he plays with. Now, from a technical standpoint, his
one of the best.
The next thing that you see with him, he has really efficient movement. And by that, I mean, like when he's breaking on routes, he doesn't waste any time. Like sometimes you see guys take like extra steps or they do this thing where they're like off balance and they have to catch themselves to go back forward or they're up and down. Like I tell my guys all the time, be a piano player, don't be an accordion, right? Don't be the accordion that goes up and down. Like be that piano player who's consistent at the same level. So whether I'm going forward or backward, I am at that same level. I'm not going up and down, right?
Yeah.
Devin Witherspoon is the like picture of that piano player. He's not an accordion, right? So here's a great clip of him against Wyoming, and they're going to run like the little out route right here. And his movement, his technique, it all shows up, right? He's really patient. gets on top of the route, breaks through it, looks at him, stares him down, and is asking like, "Why'd you throw at this guy? Like, you don't try me." Like, that's the kind of stuff he's doing after every play. I love that, man. Like,
Yeah.
he's such an infectious player. That's such good stuff. Like, he weaves to the top of the route. He gives him a little, like you can see right here. He starts weaving to it, and then he feels it. He knows, like, he's breaking before the receiver's breaking.
Yeah.
He knows, like, his instincts are so good. He knows what's coming. Like, there's no way that ball's getting completed. If that ball's thrown on target, it's probably picked. Right? The fact that it was thrown way outside, that's the only reason why it wasn't picked. Because he beat the guy on the break. So that efficiency of movement, and then lastly, his eyes. He just does a really good job of locating the ball when he's in man coverage, and then he excels in recognizing routes and getting his eyes back to the quarterback in zone coverage. So he's a guy who can do a little bit of both of those things, and you'll see here's another clip of him against Wyoming. You know, he's in the slot here, playing like that slot corner role. He's playing man coverage. They run the little slot fade against him, throw a vertical ball up, and then he just goes and finds the football. He gets his eyes back. He's in phase, finds the football in the air. And then again, that attitude shows up. This guy is a football player, man. He gets the ball in his hands. He's trying to go score. You can feel it. He's pointing out, like, block here, block there, get in front of me. Like, I'm trying to go score right now. But again, finds the football. He gets his eyes back. He's a playmaker. And then, like, stiff arms the dude to the ground and looks at him like, dude, this dude is really good. He's a really good football player. You know, when I watched him, he made me think of another Big Ten corner that came out about 5 years ago. Similar kind of build where he's tough. He can play in the slot. He can play outside. He can play a little man. He can play a little zone. He has good eyes and instincts. He's just a playmaker. This guy was known a little bit more for like some of his punt and kick returns than maybe Devin Witherspoon is, but similar deal with that infectious attitude and energy, playing with that boulder on the shoulder. And that was Desmond King, who was originally drafted out of Iowa to go play with the Chargers, right? And played in the slot with the Chargers for, I believe, 4 years before signing a little bit bigger deal in Houston to go play the outside corner now. Yeah. And he's a really good football player. So he's able to do all those things. And that's why I really like Devin Witherspoon, because I think something he could do early on, he could have a very similar trajectory to me to Desmond King, where he could come in and, play in the slot of a really good team right away, play the slot corner role, or be able to flip to playing outside, just depending on matchups and what you need. But here's a play this last year from Desmond King against the Titans in the red zone. Actually, is a play that ends up helping seal them the game. Flips and runs, gets his eyes back to the football, finds it, makes that play against, the fade route there. Kind of similar, seam ball look to what happened with my guy Devin Witherspoon in the last clip. But then even at the end, like that attitude, he's like, yeah, don't throw at me, like all that. It just all felt very similar to me. And I think Devin Witherspoon's ceiling may even be higher than Desmond King's, but very similar kind of player. Like, just watching them, I thought their kind of makeup was similar. That similar kind of dog, and the versatility to be able to play in that slot and outside. Great eyes, great efficiency, all that. So, Joe, what did you see, or what did you think?
Yeah, I had similar notes again, just worded them a little different. Said he was powerful. You saw him when we seen that play against Michigan, when he broke on that running back and laid hat right in his chest. Probably took the wind out of him or something. Mm-hmm. That dude was doing that on a lot of the plays I've seen him tackle, where he was running upfield like that. I said he was really technical. He kind of talked about that with like his when he broke on that out ball before the even what's it called? Before the route runner did it. And then I said he was good with his hands. I think I seen a play of him where the receiver was like, he kind of had him a little bit beat, not too much. He went up for the ball, and instantly, as soon as he saw his hands go up, he threw his and like broke it up.
Made the play. Yeah. I think that one was against Penn State. I know which one you're talking about.
And so, yeah. Those were my notes for him, and then my comp that I had. I don't know if this player plays with like that attitude like he does, but I went with Pat Surtain, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
That's who I had for him.
Yeah, I think interestingly enough, with Patrick Surtain, I think he has a little bit of that dog too. He's probably a more prototypical like press corner than Devin Witherspoon is, but like in terms of the attitude part, yeah, I see it for sure. Right now, he's currently projected to be a first rounder, somewhere between pick 6 and 26. I already said it earlier. I think this is a match made in heaven with the Lions. The Lions have pick 6 and what are they? Their second pick is what, pick 11, I think, something like that. They have the Rams pick at 6, and then they have their own pick a little farther. Man, it's maybe not 11. Maybe what is it, 19, something like that. And I think if he's there,
18.
they may take 18. Okay, so they have pick 6 and 18. If he's there at, he'll be there at 6. They may take him there, and they may try their luck and say, hey, we would take him at 18 if he's there. But if he's still there at 18, I don't think he gets past the Lions, personally. I mean, I just don't think he does. I think he's a match made in heaven with the Lions. I think the Steelers would be very interesting just because, no more Joe Hayden. They lost Mike Hinton, who's their awesome slot guy, a couple years ago in free agency to the Bengals, and haven't really been able to replace him in terms of what he was able to bring. I think Devin Witherspoon could step in Pittsburgh and be like an awesome player for them in terms of filling kind of those voids. He would fit with the Lions really well. He's like a Dan Campbell player, like for sure. We talked about the Eagles and Commanders already, so those teams make sense as well. Any of these teams, if they draft him, I feel like they're getting such a good football player. Like when it comes to what he can do, like his physicality and his movement translates for him playing both outside and in the slot. I think he can match up slot receivers. He can play zone. He can play the outside corner using his eyes, being able to make plays out of zone. He can play a little bit of man, play a little bit of press. Like he's versatile enough to do all those things and physical enough to play inside. So I just think that makes him a really valuable player. If you're drafting him, you're drafting a really good football player. So
yeah, no doubt.
I really like Devin Witherspoon.
Yeah, and then I'll hit you with some stats for him over the years. He had 23 solo tackles out of 33, 2019, 19 out of 33 in 2020, 42 out of 52 his junior year. Then last year he had 33 of 42. He got one sack his junior year. That's one that stood out to me.
Yeah.
He had a forced fumble in 2020. 2020 also had 2 picks, and then last year he had 3.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a ball player, man. I mean, he got a sack, that's kind of as a corner. So I think, looking at him, he's going to be whoever gets him. I think you're going to be okay. I don't think you can go wrong with him or Christian Gonzalez, man. I think both those guys are just really good ball players. So, who we got next?
We're looking at Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. He's 6'2", 198. Fun fact, he's from Bakersfield. Pretty random. Another 4-year guy. 34 games, 113 tackles, 20 pass breakups, 1 pick. A little bit higher on the completion percentage on him, 53%, and then 7 touchdowns allowed.
Okay. So JPJ is, if you're looking for the lockdown, go play press and take away a guy in this draft, then Joey Porter Jr. is your guy. That's what he does. Let him go draft him and just let him go play on an island out there. Let him just go create JPJ Island.
This is hilarious because my first note says big on man. That dude was out there all day. I could see that one from a mile away.
Yeah. And then you add in the fact that like he's 6'2", 200. 6'2", 200, and you're like, whoa. Another guy who's just gigantic on film. His explosion maybe isn't where Christian Gonzalez, like in terms of the athlete, he may not be where Christian Gonzalez is. I mean, Joe, what were his combine numbers?
Ooh, we got 4.46 on his 40, 35-inch vert, and a 10.9 broad jump.
So the numbers bear that out. On film, he does not look quite the athlete that Christian Gonzalez is. He's about the same size. He's probably a really good athlete for this size, right? He's still like a good athlete for his size and speed or his size and weight and everything. And it's what makes Christian Gonzalez look all the more impressive. And
Yeah, that's true.
We're playing the comparison game here. Like, who do you draft for what? You know what I'm saying? So it's natural to kind of watch these guys on film and kind of start comparing them against each other. But what I will say is that while JPJ may not be quite the athlete Christian Gonzalez is, his press technique and what he does, it's like, I mean, just look at his strengths. Number one, his length is just like an ultimate cheat code. I don't know the wingspan measurables on him or Christian Gonzalez, but I'll bet his is longer for their height, because his length is seriously like, it's a cheat code. Even when he loses at the line of scrimmage, his length can make up for it. So like, that's the thing that makes a guy like this so valuable, because like, he can go play press man, and we'll see right here. He's playing Purdue. I believe this is from this year. He actually loses on the outside route at the line of scrimmage, but like, he has just enough speed and then that length where it doesn't matter. Like, even though he kind of loses on the outside route, he gets back underneath, and just that long arm, like, it, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you can beat me and you still didn't beat me. Like, I can, as a coach, I can work with that. Like, I'll make sure he doesn't beat you the first time, and then the great thing is, like, even when that fails, your length won't.
Yeah.
Like, you're so long.
You still got extra room to make up.
Yeah, like, I can step outside. I have a little bit of room to misstep, and then as a player, like, when you know that, now you can play like your game, and even when you make a mistake, you know you've got this like safety net that will always save you. So that's a thing that just stood out, is that length. That, like I said, even when he loses at the line of scrimmage, he can make up for it. The next thing I saw is he's really valuable in the red zone. Like, if you see, it felt like half his highlights were in the red zone. He's a really good, because of his length again, he's a really good catch technique player. And by catch technique, Joe, we mean like a guy who you're playing off, but you're playing off at about 4 or 5 yards. Then you'll see this a lot in the red zone, or you'll see it on like 3rd and 5 on, the defensive side of the 50, right? The offense going in, trying to score.
Yeah.
If it's about that 3rd and 5, 4th and 5 or less, or you're in the red zone, guys will play catch technique, which means they're going to play it like 4 or 5 yards off, but they're really going to just bounce their feet and sit right there and wait for you to come to them. And then all they're going to do is move laterally with the receiver's stem. And then as a receiver, like, you got to run through me. So I'm catching you, basically. So he was really good in that catch technique, or in press versus the fade ball and slants. So he's like, teams talk about like the matchup guy on offense all the time. Like, oh, this guy's a mismatch in the red zone. Joey Porter Jr. is like the neutralizer of that. He's the matchup guy on defense. So we'll look at here, like, there's just a couple clips of him in the red zone. So here's one 2 years ago against Ohio State. I believe this was against Garrett Wilson. Fade ball? Nah. Get out of here. Nah. Shake my head in your face. Nah, Garrett Wilson, who, by the way, won Rookie of the Year and lit the league on fire, was awesome. Nah, not in the red zone. Nope. Okay, Minnesota or Auburn. Go ahead, take your luck. Nah, you're not fitting that ball in there. Too long. Okay, Minnesota, try and throw the slant. Nah, too long. Like, I'm going to play catch technique. I'm going to sit at 5 yards. You can try and throw that slant, and I'm going to get my hand in there. You're not going to fit that ball in there. Like, it just, he's a matchup nightmare for offenses in the red zone. So, hey, you want to put your best guy out there? We'll put JPJ out there and let him take him out, because you're not going to – his length is too – there's not enough space to beat him. He's too long. You can see it on all these clips. There's a great catch technique clip right there where he just breaks on the ball and it's no good. So then the last thing, obviously, I kind of already mentioned this. He's last in his greatest quality. He's just his unique height, his arm length. He has pretty fluid hips. They make him potentially an elite press corner in the league. They make him, he could be the JPJ Island guy in this draft. I mean, of all the guys, if I'm looking as a team and I want to just play a lot of man, if I'm looking to find just a press man corner, this is probably the guy. This is what he does. So here's a great clip of it. It's against Minnesota this year. So you can see already, clip kind of starts just at the start of the line of scrimmage. That's like technique press right there. Like that's what you want your press to look like. I'm square. I'm in phase. I'm not letting you get inside. I'm going to throw that inside hand on the jam. Right? This is exactly how I teach my guys. Like I'm going to stab that inside shoulder. Boom. I'm going to flip and run. I'm going to go find the football. My length, my long arm. Even when I don't quite see the ball, I stick it out there, and you got nothing, dude. I'm in phase. I can't really see the ball. Oh, I see it last minute. My arm, I stick that arm out. So hard to complete a ball on this guy because he's so long, dude. His arms. It feels like they go forever. It's like Mr. Elastic. So you really love that when you see him on film. The guy who he really reminded me of when I was watching him, I'm like, all right, who's another one of those long press man corners? Not necessarily a household name, but kind of a younger guy. Been in the league for, I think, 4 or 5 years now. Not heralded, not talked about a lot, but that same mold of I'm super long. I play a lot of press. It's going to be really hard to throw the ball on me. Had some success in the league. Cameron Dantzler for the Minnesota Vikings. This is a great clip of him against the Saints this last year in when they played in London. It was a great game, by the way. Huge play here that he makes. The Saints have 2nd and 9, and they're going to try and air it out. He's going to play press on, interestingly enough, another Ohio State receiver, Chris Olave, right? The Saints rookie at the time. So you'll see it here. Just a really good job of like flipping his hips and running. He doesn't even really get a stab. Just finds the football, that long arm. You know what I mean? Same kind of deal. He's like really long, sticks that arm out. Watch it one more time. Finds the football, sticks that arm out. You're not getting that completion. So even when I'm beat by a step, and Chris Olave, all the receivers, they always want PI, right?
That's why I was laughing.
Even when I'm beat by a step, if I have that arm length, I'm not beat. You know what I'm saying? And that's where I think they're very similar players and where their advantages are. So, I mean, Joe, what did you think when you saw him?
I thought he had really good hands. You talked about his length. I'm sure those two go hand in hand. He was batting everything down as we've seen, and I said he had good eyes too. Like not like my man Cam Smith over there. Like he actually has good eyes. Like it was more based off the guy he's defending and not so much trying to jump something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But those were my notes for him.
You definitely want, if you're going to play as much man as he does, you're definitely going to have to play through the man and not be a guy who's cheating back, eyes back to the quarterback as much. It's really hard to if you're going to be playing with so much press man. So yeah, he's definitely has to be more disciplined that way because of the amount of press man he plays. In terms of what his draft projections are looking like, a lot of people, he's first round pick. A lot of people have him between picks 6 and 28. Pick 6 seems to be that like ceiling. A corner seems to be going at pick 6. That's the Lions. Whether that's the Lions or someone trading up with them, feels like a corner is going to go there. Whichever one they like the best or someone else likes the best to trade up for. Team that I saw that I thought was interesting, mentioned with him, was the Patriots. The Patriots love having a corner that can just like go take a guy out. They did have the guy who came on for them this year, Jack. I'm completely blanking on Jack's last name, but he was a rookie this year and he had a really good year. He kind of played that role for them, but I wouldn't be surprised if like Bill Belichick is like, hey, I wouldn't mind having another guy like that. And then some familiar faces, the Eagles, the Commanders, and then hey, surprise, surprise, the Vikings. Fits kind of what Cameron Dantzler does. So, some teams, couple new teams there that pop up, couple teams that we just know are looking at corner, the Eagles and Commanders. So,
Jack Jones.
Jack Jones, thank you, Jack Jones. He had a really good year. Sorry, Jack. He had a really good year this year for the Patriots. So I don't know that they necessarily need a corner, but they could take one here, and have two really good ones. So
Yeah.
Anything else that you saw on JPJ or somewhere you'd like to see him play, Joe?
I think the Vikings was an interesting one to see pop up. That was cool because I when we were talking about the amount of like man or press he was running, that's one team that came to my mind that I thought always ran that too. Similar
Yeah.
type of defense. But I mean, Patriots would be interesting as well. Just that'd be later in the draft, but it'd be interesting because they always have some good defensive backs out there too. So
Yeah.
I'm sure he'd fit in real nice with Billy B.
Well, Belichick loves to do the thing where it's like, all right, I have a guy that I know can take out, like their second best player, and then I'll try and double the best player, whatever he wants to do. So he loves to have different like toys he can play with, essentially.
Yeah.
So especially defensively. Who we got last today?
Last we got Keely Ringo. He's 6'2", 210 out of Georgia. Played for 3 years, 29 games in that time span, 76 tackles. He's got 22 pass breakups, 4 picks. Seems like a lockdown defender with his completions percentage, 43%, and then 4 touchdowns allowed.
All right, so when you watch Keely Ringo on film, the very first thing that stands out is I was asking myself, like, this guy looks like a running back. He's literally like a legitimate 6'2", 210. He's built like Dalvin Cook, but he plays corner. When you talk about like, okay, so, and Joe, you made this point early, and you're right. There's so many big dudes in this draft that play corner, like big, big corners. This guy's the biggest of them. This guy could easily play linebacker, could easily just slide inside and play like an outside linebacker. That's how big he is. He's freaking massive, and he's tough and strong at the point of attack, beating blocks and his tackling. Like, you kind of expect a guy this big that he'd be good at block destruction and tackling. And that is something he strives in. His toughness shows up big time because he literally is built like a running back. So here he is against Kentucky this year. There's a couple plays here that are just crazy. So he's playing corner. He sees he just bullies that receiver, right? He sees the little screen, the little bubble, and he just bullies the corner in front of him, right? So then here's another one where they're like, okay, we've got 2 tight ends to the backside. It's a little Detroit pair. And Georgia probably had a little check knowing that, these guys are probably not going to go out for a pass. So he's going to blitz off the edge. They run a little play action. He just absolutely flattens Will Levis. So he's a corner, like you talked about Devin Witherspoon having a sack. Keely Ringo is another one. Does he not look like an outside linebacker, like an edge rusher right there?
No, definitely. And he just smokes that tight end too. Like he didn't even get a hand on him.
It's funny how he just tosses receivers in screen game. Like they can't block him. He's too big. He literally looks like an edge rusher, not a corner on that. He's so big. He's so massive, dude. He's like the biggest corner I feel like I've ever seen in terms of his actual height and his like size and his like body. Which, most of the time you see a guy like he can't move as well, so that's usually a detriment. But in Ringo's case, he makes it work. I wasn't always like, oh wow, on film. There was some stuff that I saw that I didn't like, but like his zone coverage instincts in general are really good. He had really good eye discipline. He has pretty good speed. He's elite speed. What do you run in the 40, Joe?
4.36 in the 40.
Yeah, I mean, so when you combine the eye discipline with the instincts and the elite speed, the break on the ball, that's his deal. I mean, he was really good at that. So we'll look at it here. Some of the zone coverage instincts, right, where he can just break on the football. It's against USF this year. So the vertical ball. Oh, man. He just finds the ball. Or I'm sorry, UAB, not USF. UAB. But here you go. Getting out of his pedal zone. He's playing open hip technique. Oof. Goes and finds the football. Here's another clip against Kentucky where now he's breaking downhill and he's making plays. Right?
Yeah, I like the drawing from the broadcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
It
here
helps you
he
see
is,
it.
he's running downhill.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just like whether he's breaking vertical with the hips open. He really liked playing that open hip technique. I'm not as huge of a fan of the open hip technique, but it works for some guys. And for Keely Ringo, I don't think his hips are as fluid as some of the other guys we talked about in this draft class.
Yeah.
So that kind of helped him playing open hip like that. And then, breaking downhill, the elite speed, all of it, I think his instincts, especially in zone coverage, are something that allowed, you kind of play in the in-between game there. You can kind of see it from that angle. He's playing top down. You can play either way. You can break either way. That's something that I thought was a real strength for him. And then lastly, biggest thing for him was his playmaking. Like it seemed like every time Georgia needed a big play, he was the one who made the big play at the big moment for Georgia. Like just a unique sense of the moment, an innate ability to just come up with the football, right? Like you go back to the national championship 2 years ago against Bryce Young in Alabama, right? In the fourth quarter, they need a play. Ball's thrown to him. He picks it off. And then, again, looks like a running back.
Yeah.
With
He looks
the
like
ball
he'd be
in his
like
hands.
Derrick Henry right there.
Yeah. And then goes and scores, right? Like, just, again, the ball finds him. He's just always in the right spot. The ball finds him, and he can go make that play. I mean, this play basically won them the national title that year. I just think he's a unique playmaker.
Who's that guy?
Oh, getting blasted at the end. Yeah, getting blasted at the end. That's a fun shot. So, I think you combine all that stuff, his toughness, his zone coverage instincts, his playmaking, you're getting a really good football player. Again, there's some dudes in this class. He's kind of that attitude and toughness, kind of him and Devin Witherspoon are in the same plane for me. I think Devin Witherspoon is a more technical football player, but Ringo, same thing where he's a football player for sure. Definition of it. Joe, what'd you see?
Yeah, so unfortunately, my guy came unprepared. I only did 4 out of the 5. I missed his name on the sheet. But
Come on, Joe.
but what I do know is he definitely, based off his combine numbers that I have for you, seems like that open hip technique was definitely something he needed. Because like we mentioned earlier, his 40 was 4.36. I think that was faster than everyone, I think. Let me double check that. He didn't run one. Yeah, he's faster than everyone who had the numbers in the 40. And then, so that helps him gain ground on everyone, right? But his other numbers aren't as nearly as impressive. His vertical was 33.5. And then he had a 10'2" on his broad jump. And I think that ties back to you describing him as a running back.
He's so like big and bulky. Yeah. Yes. And sometimes that having all that extra muscle, it's tough to be like flexible and bendable and athletic, which is what you need to have those like that ability to flip your hips like that. So that's why I said you don't see a lot of corners built like him. Like you just don't see it.
Yeah.
And so when I look at him, something that I thought about, kind of another guy who, when he was coming out a little bit bulkier, has sort of thinned out, I think, in his career since getting to the NFL. But it can kind of do different stuff for you and also always seems to make the big play. Funny enough, he's out of Alabama. Marlon Humphrey. Just Marlon Humphrey's just a good football player. Yeah. It's a similar deal. Marlon Humphrey, especially coming out, he was a little bit thicker, bigger for a corner. It was kind of like, is he going to play safety? And I think I have some similar thoughts about Ringo. Is like he might be more of a safety, but And the crazy thing is like, all right, well, if you think he's more of a safety, why is he in their top 5 corners? He's in my top 5 because this guy's a football player. I don't care what you draft him to do. You draft him, I feel like he's going to be really good. And whatever you ask him to do, he's going to figure it out. That's just how I feel watching his tape and all the plays that he makes. And so even if you draft him and it's like, we end up playing him in the slot, or end up playing him as a safety, I think you're still getting a really good player. So, which is kind of the attitude that I felt like the Ravens took when they drafted Marlon Humphrey, and that's what you got. Like, Marlon Humphrey plays all over the place for him. I think Kelee Ringo could do something very similar. Like I have it written down right here. What can he do for a defense? He's a football player. The team drafting him is really drafting that rather than just like a corner. I think I can envision him as a zone corner, play some in the slot, and like I said, I think he could even play safety. He's physical enough and he's big enough that he certainly could. So right now he's a first or second round pick for a lot of teams, somewhere between picks 14 and 34. I think he's probably more of a second round pick because of what I just talked about, some of the limitations in his movement, compared to the other 4 guys that we looked at. But some interesting teams, the Steelers, the Buccaneers, the Vikings, and the Jaguars. All kind of different teams. I could see him on that Jags defense.
I was going to ask. I wanted to hear what you had to say about that because I know you love them.
I love that Jags defense, all the stuff they do with fire zones and pressures. Like I could see him being a guy that they play in the slot and they let him blitz some, they let him cover, they let him play some zone. Like I could see them doing all different kinds of stuff and being imaginative with him, using all the different skills that he brings and not just sticking him out there and trying to say, go play corner. Because I think if you do that, he's probably not as successful as he could be. So I'm really hoping there's a team that uses him creatively, and all the different things that he can do, utilize his skills.
Yeah.
So Kelee Ringo, he's a football player. I mean, he may not be the fluid corner that people want, but he's big, fast, and he's physical. So I'll take him on my team.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it right there at the end. I was gonna say you could use him more like in the nickel or something, have him rush the edge and use him that way, because he could still play, like he could still cover. You know what I mean? But you could also use him to get downhill and like try to put some pressure on that QB too.
Yeah, because make no mistake, it's not like he's not a backer either. He's still a secondary player. He is. He moves well enough that he's a secondary player, no question. But he's physical enough and big enough that you could kind of cheat it with him playing that nickel where you don't feel like you're losing a box player, by still having him out there. So yeah, you can kind of cheat a little bit with him. We ready to get some rankings, Joe?
Yeah, let's look at the way we stacked up these players amongst each other.
Joe, I want to let you go first this time.
Oh, you want me to go? All right,
yeah, hit me.
See. So Kelee Ringo, let me get it out now. Like I mentioned, I didn't watch the film on him. I couldn't really dissect him too well. So he's at the bottom of the list, sadly enough. But we talked about him earlier. We mentioned it plenty of times. Christian Gonzalez, that man is a monster. He did anything and everything that I've seen. Even playing big in the special teams. That's really impressive to me. You can tell he has that fire in him for sure. So he's top of the list. Number 2, Devin Witherspoon. I talked about it earlier. He's a very technical dude. We've seen him. He's smart. He does very good things when the ball's thrown his way. Like him there. Really, really like solid cornerback that you would love to have. Just a man of the game. Joey Porter. I have him at 3. That's another situational one. I said it when we talked about him. He's big on man. I don't know how much he works with the zone, how well he is there, but he's situational for certain teams, so that's his knock for me. Then Cam Smith, I just think. Let me go look back at my notes from the beginning. I just think he talked about it, the feast or famine. I don't like my DB trying to jump the gun all the time, especially with your comp of Trayvon. We've seen them get those picks that one year, and then last year, what happened? You know what I mean? Like it's good when it works. When it doesn't, you could tell.
Yeah, I got you.
So yeah,
Um,
that's my list for the cornerback rankings.
our lists turns out are really similar. I've got Christian Gonzalez number 1. I gave that away. I couldn't help myself. The athleticism combined with the technicality, like the technical skills, it's just rare. I don't know that he's going to be, Sauce Gardner or Patrick Surtain, like a couple of the guys that have drafted the last couple of years. I don't know if he's those guys in terms of what they do, but I think you're getting an elite player. Like, I think you're getting a future Pro Bowler with that kid. Like, I think he's a baller. Devin Witherspoon, he's probably, of all the guys we've watched on tape so far, he might be like my favorite player I've watched.
Uh-huh.
And not in terms of like a ranking, but just like my personal, like, I like this guy and I love what I watch. He's that guy for me. I love Devin Witherspoon on tape. He just pops, dude. Like, you could be watching, he's the kind of guy that you're watching someone else and then he makes a play and you're like, whoa, who is that? He's just like, that's a really good thing to be, So I really like Devin Witherspoon. And I talked about his physicality and toughness and the chip that he plays with like ad nauseum. So I'll spare you on this one. Cam Smith, number 3. I took him over Joey Porter Jr. here. It was really close between those two. I like Cam Smith's versatility a little bit more.
That makes sense.
And even and JPJ, like I said, I think he's a dude that is someone's going to draft and be like, all right, we've got our shutdown corner now. So I do think what he does is extremely valuable. I like that with Cam Smith. I feel like I can do a little bit more. But I love JPJ, so have him at 4. And then Keely Ringo, like I said, I like Keely Ringo for a lot of the same reasons I like Devin Witherspoon. I just think Devin Witherspoon is a little bit more technical and sound in what he does, and his movement's a little more efficient right now.
Yeah.
And Keely Ringo is a little bit bigger. I think he has a little tougher time flipping his hips and some of those other things. But from an instinctual standpoint, like ball player, his tackling is on point. Like all those things, I really like Keely Ringo for those reasons. And then I did want to shout out a couple guys that didn't make the list. Emmanuel Forbes from Mississippi State, also a really good player, long, quick, fast, all of those things. Clark Phillips III at Utah, another kind of physical corner. Riley Moss, I got to see at the Senior Bowl. Another guy I got to watch at the Senior Bowl out of Iowa. He's kind of a fun dude because he's like, just keeping it real, like because he's the white corner, I think people are kind of like, can this guy really play? And then you watch him and like he played well in the Senior Bowl. Like I think he's got the goods to go be a real NFL player, and I think he's got a little bit of that dog and playmaker. He kind of like Keely Ringo, where it was like every time Iowa needed a big play, who was making the play the last few years? Riley Moss. DJ Turner from Michigan is on the undersized, scale of the corner spectrum. Like we talked about all these big guys. DJ Turner is not that. I think he's like 5'9", but blazing speed. I think he ran the fastest of all the corners at the combine. Like Keely was like 4.36. DJ Turner, I think, ended up at 4.34 or 4.35. So like blazing speed, really fast, has that catch-up speed. So it's really hard to beat him vertically, but because he's a little smaller, the matchups are tougher for him.
4.26 for the man, DJ Turner.
4.26. I was a whole tense off. Yeah, 4.26. Like extremely fast. And then the last guy I have on here is Deontay Banks from Maryland. He seems to be a guy a lot of people really, really like and have even a first-round grade on. Not as high on him. I think he's a good football player. I just thought he was a little stiff. I wasn't as impressed with him as some of the other guys. I don't think he brings some of the versatility some of the other guys brought. So, but all these guys who are getting mentioned are good football players. Like, don't get it twisted. I'm merely pointing out why they're not on my list. But
yeah,
I think this draft class for corners, it's 1 and 2 to me. Gonzalez and Witherspoon, far and away the two best prospects. Then I think 3 through 10 are all really tight. Like I think Cam Smith to Deontay Banks, all tight. Like all those guys are kind of similar. Like it was really, really matter of personal preference and nitpicking to get to a top 5. Because really, like I said, 3 through 10, I could easily argue for any of these honorable mention guys to be in my top 5 today.
Mhm.
And then like I said, matter of personal preference and nitpicking that I ended up with Smith, Porter Jr., and Ringo as opposed to some of these other guys. But yeah, I think you can't go wrong if you're drafting Gonzalez and Witherspoon. And then I think from there, drafting a corner at like the back end of the first round, early second round in this draft is going to be really profitable because there's just a lot of dudes who are still going to be available that are really good. So I think if I'm drafting in the top 10, I'm not taking anyone not named Gonzalez or Witherspoon. If I'm drafting in the back 20s, early 30s, you know what I'm saying? That's when some of these other guys for me come into play.
That makes sense.
So,
Then here,
but
two of your honorable mentions real quick. They both ran 4.35. We got Emmanuel Forbes and your dude Deontay Banks. Since
both
I'm
those
looking
guys
at the numbers right now.
Both those guys are also, elite speed kind of guys, and that's why I think people like them. Deontay Banks is definitely Deontay Banks was a really good combine tester. So people love him because his athleticism was off the charts at the combine. I just didn't think his film matched those numbers as well as a guy like Christian Gonzalez. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I'm always going to lean more towards like, what do I see on film versus like, what do your numbers say? So for me, that's
where
just
all the proof is.
Yeah, proof is in the pudding, baby. But Joe, who are we coming back with next week? What group are we
Next
coming
week,
back
we're
with?
looking at the people we'd love to see. Too bad they don't get that long span in the NFL, but we got the running backs.
Oh, the undervalued and yet necessary position.
Yep.
Yeah, the running backs.
Quick
The running
turnover,
backs,
but they're always there to the balling.
very, very different position group that we'll look at next week just because the value for those guys isn't there. Like, we're going to be talking about guys in the top 5 that will have like third round grades. So versus like all these guys and all the receivers are all like borderline first round guys. Yeah, those running backs, you might have one or two go in the first couple rounds, and then it'll be later before some of the other guys go. But we'll talk about our top 5 there and get it rolling. But we got to finish with our banger of the week.
Yeah, what you got for us this week?
Oh, what do I have? All right. So I've been watching. I love TV.
Yep.
Don't love TV quite as much as I love football, but it's a close second, right?
I was gonna say, yeah.
It's a close second. Do love TV. Show I've been watching or rewatching, I should say.
Oh,
Succession. The
what's that about?
final season is going to come back the end of this March. And Joe, if you've never watched it,
Don't even know what it is.
You're in for a treat, man. So it's about a dad who's like the patriarch of his family, and he also owns this like multimedia company.
Okay.
And he is played by Brian Cox, if you know who that is. But he's like this kind of older guy. In the beginning of the show, he has like this huge life-threatening, I can't remember off the top of my head, I think it was a stroke and or a heart attack or something like that. Puts him in the hospital. And he has all these kids, right? He has like 4 kids. And all of them are kind of like trying to figure out who's going to be the person who succeeds him, like who's going to take over the company if he dies.
Yeah.
But like none of them are quite worthy. It's this weird thing where you're kind of rooting for each one of them in their own way, but then they all do things that you're like, oh,
it makes you question,
spoiled, privileged, like entitled, incompetent, like are all words that come to mind. But then at the same time, their dad is an absolute jerk, like the worst kind of person in terms of a dad, like plays mind games with them, like tells them how they're not good enough. Like it's at the same time witty and funny as it is like completely dramatic and keeps you on the edge of your toes like the whole time. It's had 3 seasons and it's going into the 4th season that's going to start at the end of this month.
Okay.
I would highly recommend you like watching and catching up. I think each season's 10 episodes, so it's 30 episodes and they're going into the last 10 episode run. But the guy who's the lead is the not the oldest son, but one of the middle sons. His name is Kendall. The guy who plays
Uh-huh.
him is Jeremy Strong. Jeremy Strong's won a bunch of awards for like his performance and everything. And yeah, it's just really good. They do there's all kinds of crazy twists and turns. Like you kind of don't know what's happening sometimes, and then it happens. You're like, whoa. It's just really good TV. It's like a great mix of like a witty comedy that has the ability to just make you absolutely laugh or be like, what the heck? But then also at the same time is like really sad and dramatic. And you're like, whoa, this kind of sucks. Like it does a good job of being both those things at once. Classic HBO show, It's really,
Of
really,
course.
really good. I highly recommend to anyone listening that hasn't watched it as it goes into its final season.
Yeah, I was gonna say, bro, you must know me too well because I was gonna ask you 3 questions and you answered all of them before I even got the chance. So
Tip of the
I must
cap to
ask
you,
the
my
same
friend.
questions all the time
You
because
already
that's just
knew.
the way they come.
You already knew, bro. That's our
So
that's
yeah, we'll
our
see.
our podcasting chemistry, bro. We just went up
Yeah.
8 levels on podcasting chemistry right there.
Well, my one question you didn't answer though. How long are the episodes? They the 30, an hour? What are we looking at on those?
I think they're the 45-minute variety.
Okay, so in between.
45 to an hour. There may be a couple episodes that are like a little longer.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So
That's what you're looking at. So like decent commitment, but like not too much. Yeah.
yeah,
You could catch up. You could probably get yourself right by the time the 4th season premieres if you wanted to. It's good.
for sure. But yeah, closing us out though. The man, the mid, the running back. He was a running back.
Hey.
Ray, he's taking us out as always.